Be seated, please. Yes, Mr. Bickford-Smith.
I'm grateful. Mrs. Al-Najjar, when you were being sworn, you gave a clarification by reference to paragraph 48 of your statement. That's at page 7607. You referred to an email of the, I believe, of the 7th of August 2019. At paragraph 93 of your statement, and sorry, the clarification was that you were on holiday on the 7th of August 2019, is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Now, at page 7619,
Which page?
7619, paragraph 93, that email is summarised and set out. You said, I received. Do I understand your evidence to be that although you received this email, you didn't actually see it at the time? Is that your evidence?
Yes.
Now, life being what it is, holidays come to an end. This email will still have been in your inbox on your return. Did you see it then?
I don't remember seeing it.
We looked at that email earlier. It was then forwarded on by Mr. Bucket to others, namely Aziza and Diana Tabara. And you can see that at 2981. Sorry, Aziza and Caroline, my apologies. Caroline Abbasi and Diana Tabara. Sorry, Aziza Dada and Caroline Abbasi. So this is also, we see an email above this, 2981. Mr. Bucket says all 4 of the ER people on the email are out of the office until the 20th of August. Can you help us with the question of whether there was a conversation that you can remember later in August about this email or not? And specifically, can I please take you, in fairness, to page 3193 of the bundle?
3193?
Yes. So we see the same email there, August the 7th, and then up on 3192, we say, I was reflecting on our call, an email from you to Mr. Bucket saying, I was reflecting on our call yesterday, and if I recall correctly, you mentioned you will not be reviewing the new allegations. Will this mean you will not address the first 3 points? If this is the case, then we have to address all in our review. We also have to open a new investigation and ask Shiraz if he wants to follow a formal grievance hearings or follow speak up. Did he mention he wanted to remain anonymous if this was going to be managed? Let me know also for your information. I've assigned the review to Diana. So this is the same email. When you go down, you see on 3193, the third bullet point. See the email below from Shiraz regarding comments made by Sahel Akbar to Alessandro Verselli. We're concerned about the content of these comments, which should be looked into by ER. We've not spoken to Shiraz, Sahel, nor Alessandro. So I'd suggest to you that by the 27th of August, which is when you'd spoken to Mr. Bucket, you did have an awareness of the complaints about what had been said to Mr. Verselli earlier in August.
I genuinely cannot recall, but it may have happened. I'm not sure. From the email, there is a conversation between Simon and myself, but I can't recall from my memory now the details. I can't say yes or no, but I think I'm not comfortable saying yes or no. But it's not because I remember and I don't want to say. I just can't recall that we discussed that email of 7 August, but the action is agreed on email. So my answer, if I don't recall, the 7th August email was discussed in details, but I can see that I've given instructions for Diana to take on from here.
Now at 3134, we see an email exchange between Mr. Sheikh and Mr. Long from the 15th of August, saying, Mr. Sheikh is saying, I'd like to reiterate it's becoming increasingly difficult for me to conduct regular business with the attitude Shiraz continues to adopt. His approach is becoming disruptive. And you can read that email on 3134 if you would like to. Now, at the end of the email on 3134, Mr. Sheikh says, I would not like to engage HR because we'll have yet another investigation. I would nevertheless request that you advise my reservations to the officials of the team who've recently conducted the detailed review on similar matters. We'll pick this up with you in detail when you're back. I'm also away till the 22nd of August. Mr. Long then, in an email in 3133, 2nd of September, back in the office as of yesterday. In terms of any comments you wish to provide the HR team that conducts an investigation following the Speak Up earlier this year, I will leave it to you to update them directly, as I would not want to speak for you and risk misconveying your points. And then an email is sent by Mr. Sheikh to you on the 2nd of September saying, Salam, can we please have a chat?
Yes.
And you say at paragraph 105 of your statement, this is at 7623, that he expressed his frustration with the claimant's conduct during the call on the 5th of August. I told Mr. Sheikh that I would ask Mr. Barra to look into the matter. You say Mr. Sheikh did not instruct me to investigate the claimant, nor did he instruct me to take any action against the claimant. That is not how Mr. Sheikh operates.
Yes.
So was it your decision that there should be an investigation of this?
Yes, after I listened to the specifics of the incident that happened on 5th of August, I felt that there is a need to run a duty of care on this matter and have it investigated, because I had enough information for this to be reviewed. The date, the witnesses, what was said, so that we can review and investigate. It didn't require someone to insist or not insist that I run it. I can take this decision in my capacity as the head of ER.
Now, you make that decision after you've become aware of the claimant's complaint about Mr. Akbar, and put it to you that part of your motivation for initiating an investigation into what had happened as between Mr. Sheikh and the claimant was the fact you knew that the claimant had made his own complaint.
Are you asking me or
Yes,
telling me?
I'm asking you.
No, that's not the reason why I raised it. I was just being consistent with how I operate in my capacity as head of ER. Even in my capacity as HRVP, I would have flagged it to ER. I was being consistent.
And on the 5th of September, Ms. Tabara met with Mr. Mahmood to address his complaints. The upshot, do you agree, was that Ms. Tabara decided that the claimant should move floors, correct?
What does upshot mean?
The consequence, the follow-on from the meeting that Ms. Tabara had on the 4th of September, sorry, the 5th of September, was that she suggested that Mr. Mahmood work temporarily on the compliance floor. Were you aware of that at the time? I believe you say.
I'm aware of the decision that Diana took, and I supported it based on the explanation given. Especially from my view, where I sit, if I feel there could be a situation of friction or further unnecessary interactions that we can limit or avoid, and it is okay for us to move locations within the bank, I would support it until the review is completed and we've established facts. Well-being of colleagues is taken into consideration. The relationship, the communication. How can I prevent further friction to the extent possible without impacting business continuity? Sometimes we would suspend someone from working completely based on the severity of the conduct. Sometimes it is just that we suspend them from coming into a certain premises. Sometimes it is just telling them avoid this floor. So it depends on the circumstances. There are different ways where we would address continuity of business and avoiding any further friction between colleagues. That's consistent with how we operate generally. I have many such examples.
And you accept that the claimant never in fact returned to the Islamic banking floor?
I think so. I'm not sure. I didn't follow up on that. All I know is that he was asked not to work from GIB during that period. If he returned or not, I'm not sure after the progress of the matter.
And another significant factor in the decision is the hostility of members of the Islamic banking unit towards the claimant, correct?
I cannot confirm that, no.
Well, can I ask you to, can I put this to you? Was the concern that there was going to be a bad blood and a potential incident as between Mr. Mahmood and colleagues?
Bad what?
Was the concern that there was going to be an unpleasant incident between Mr. Mahmood and colleagues?
As I said, to avoid further incidents of unnecessary friction or interaction, the decision was best for them to operate from different spaces, not to impact business continuity. Now, I know that Diana brought up the well-being issue of Shiraz. That could be partly it, in her opinion. But the reason why I was also supportive is this additional piece. So I acknowledge well-being, but for me, from where I'm sitting, for me is continuity of business, and there is no harm in operating from a compliance floor where other compliance members are operating. Again, in a support function, we always have our own floors, and then we can decide to sit in the spaces of our business. So for example, if I'm supporting the regional management team, I can sit on the 7th floor, but I have a seat in, if I wanted to, operate from the HR floor on the 2nd floor. This is how support functions operate. I make a point on the statement that Shiraz has made, where I was listening in the first few days. The comparison that Shiraz has made to his desk in GIB versus his desk in FM, it is not apple to apple. The FM floor, the financial markets floor, is a trading floor, and it's restricted. Even HR cannot access this floor because of the nature of doing business on that floor. It is very different from the global Islamic banking floor. It is not a trading floor in the global Islamic floor. It is just like CPBB, which is retail banking floor. It is a business floor and not a trading floor. There is a restricted area within the GIB, but that's not where Shiraz would have sat naturally. So I'm not aligned to the description that Shiraz has given in terms of describing his space as an allocated space, and he can only operate from global Islamic banking. It's not a trading floor, and many other compliance members can choose to sit anywhere else or with the business. It's a flexible. We operate on agile basis. We do not have seats allocated for individuals except if required by business like the financial markets, but not GIB as such in a compliance member's role. More so why I was comfortable with the decision, just to complete my sentence, for Shiraz to operate from a different floor along with the compliance members.
On the issue of the desk, which you have mentioned, the position was that Mr. Mahmood had a place he ordinarily sat, and do you accept that in many flexible workplaces, even if there is not a formal allocation of desks, people have de facto their own desk, correct?
Not in Standard Chartered Bank. That is not how we operate. I can decide to walk in and sit in Shiraz's desk if I wanted to. If I was in Global Islamic Banking and And if Shiraz occupied a space, a desk, I can walk in the morning and sit on his desk, the one that he sat on the day before. We do not have allocations as such. It is, in my opinion, it's not a factual statement to say that because I come and sit on this desk every day, it becomes mine. We do not operate like that. We moved away from that long time ago.
Ms. Tabara interviewed Mr. Vaselli on the 2nd of September 2019. And we can see that we can see the minutes. There's an email chain attaching the amended minutes. This is at 3203, and then the minutes themselves are at 3205 and following.
Which page do you want me to go to?
3205, please.
Thank you.
So this sets out the meeting on the 5th of August, what it's about, the BMA. Then we have over the page at 3206, and we see that Mr. Vaselli here has made a number of amendments to the minutes, the note that Ms. Tabara had sent him to review. Now, you accept that the standard practice we've seen in these interviews is that someone has an interview with an ER/HR professional, they then get sent a document, they then reply with their edits, correct?
Yes, they're sent reflective minutes for them to confirm their statements and then send it back. They may choose to add, they may choose to change, they may choose to correct. We take that and it is all tracked, so we know what they've added and what they've asked to delete.
Now, there is no reference in any of that, of either the black or the green Mr. Mahmood having behaved inappropriately. Is there?
I can read it, but I haven't read that.
Now, this is
Not specifically, yes, sorry, not specifically to Shiraz, but Vaselli mentions here there was an element of confrontation due to an exchange of views at the meeting of 5th August.
Well, you were very literal earlier about saying that Mr. Vaselli had not used the word bullying. He does not here come even close to suggesting that Mr. Mahmood had behaved aggressively, does he?
Sorry?
He does not come close to saying that Mr. Mahmood had
In this statement, he's
Yes.
not mentioning Shiraz as such.
And what happens is that on the 16th of September, you say that you had at one of your weekly catch-ups with Ms. Tabara. This is at page 7625, which is paragraph 110 of your statement. She said that the witness evidence she'd obtained to date indicated that the claimant had interrupted Mr. Sheikh and had questioned and undermined his and Mr. Akbar's competence in the presence of other colleagues. It also appeared that the claimant had spoken on the call in a condescending manner towards more senior colleagues. She therefore believed that the claimant had failed to treat colleagues fairly and with respect in line with the group's code of conduct. We agreed that, if that was her eventual conclusion, an appropriate recommendation would likely be disciplinary management. There's no reference in the minutes of the call with Mr. Vaselli that we were just looking at to any of that, is there?
allow me to explain the process in this investigation or fact-finding. Diana was assigned first to investigate the conversation that may have taken place between Sohail Akbar and Vaseli right after the call that took place, the meeting on 5th August. That was part of her review. So that would have strictly been between Sohail Akbar and Vaseli, the conversation. The scope wasn't the 5th October actual conference call that they all had.
5th August, I think you meant.
5th August, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. The 5th August conversation. When I came to know about the actual 5th August conversation, the conference call, I added that as another part to the scope of Diana's review. And that's what we usually do. We merge cases that are related to the same matter. If I wanted to, I can do that. It is within my right to do so, because we are looking into the same incident, part 1 and part 2. So I told her, add this to the scope of your interview. This statement that you are making reference to would have been for the first part of her review. What happened between Sohail and Vaseli, the conversation that was reported by Shiraz. When I told her to look into the actual conference call that took place on 5th August, she then got more statements and she interviewed more people, because the incident that was reported between Sohail Akbar and Vaseli, there were no witnesses to it. It was just Sohail and Vaseli. So it would have been the statement of Sohail, and if he admits to what he said, was claimed he said or not, and Vaseli's recollection of the conversation. The first time Vaseli was interviewed, he did not recall the statement that was claimed by Shiraz. He came back later on and changed his statement, Vaseli, to state that on recollection he thinks that the statement sounded differently and it is all recorded. Even if he said...
Where is it recorded, Mrs. Tabara? You say you make this allegation in your statement, but where is this recorded in these documents? It's not recorded in any of the documents, is it?
Probably the actual report. It's the statement. It is the document that would have been part of the fact-finding report. It's not an executive summary. It would be in the actual fact-finding report. And even if Vaseli said, yes, Sohail told me exactly the words used by Shiraz, we won't be able to uphold the allegation raised by Shiraz because it is not corroborated. There is no admission from Sohail. It is Vaseli's word against Sohail's word. Shiraz was not present. Shiraz claimed that Sohail told Vaseli something. No one was present except Sohail and Vaseli. So if Sohail says, I didn't say it, and Vaseli first says he didn't hear it, then Vaseli comes back to say, okay, I heard 1, 2, 3. But if 1, 2, 3 are not admitted by Sohail, where is the evidence that it happened? I will use the same approach that I used with Gita and Fatima's claims. There was no corroboration. I will not uphold an allegation. Similarly here, if there isn't a corroboration that Sohail said what he said, why would I then uphold the statement made, allegedly made by Sohail? I used the same principle and I applied the same in my advice to Diana. When Diana was running this review, she went into the conclusion of upholding it first, as it was said. And when I challenged her during our conversation, we sat on the same floor on that day, I do recall talking to her and I challenged her. I told her, tell me exactly what evidence do you have that Sohail said that statement. She said, Vaseli said it and Shiraz said it. I said, did Shiraz witness it first instance? She said, no. Shiraz said Vaseli told him. I said, okay. So it is inconclusive. You cannot conclude if it was said or not. How are you upholding it? That was my challenge to Diana, and that's why the report changed. However, when it comes to Shiraz's attitude and behavior during the 5th August conversation, there were several witnesses. If 3 people are saying Shiraz did 1, 2, 3 and it is corroborated, then I am more likely to uphold it because I have consistency in a statement that is corroborated. And this was what happened in this report, part 1 and part 2, and it is relating to the same incident, the same day, part 1 and part 2, before concluding the call and after concluding the call. So that's my explanation of what is written here and what you would have on this review that was conducted by Diana, and hence why there was coaching recommendation for Suhail. In case he used language that was not appropriate, he needs to be coached, but there isn't evidence to conclude that he said what he said to the specific language that was used, and disciplinary recommendation for Shiraz because there was corroboration on his behavior and attitude which was not acceptable. And this is also consistent with how we operate in the bank. It's the code of conduct and ethics, respecting others, treating people fairly. It all falls under the same code of conduct.
You agree that on the 16th of September you meet with Ms. Tabara. Agreed? Paragraph 110 of your statement, 7625.
Yeah, I've written that.
And what has happened at that meeting is that you have agreed yourself, you have agreed with her that there will be disciplinary management of the claimant, correct?
Based on the corroborated findings and how we have a matrix, and where it says it's low severity, medium, or high, based on the findings. So based on the
findings hadn't
this
even
sat
been
in
reached
the
yet.
medium severity of conduct breach.
But
So
there hadn't even
in
been
my
findings
role-
yet.
Sorry.
In my role,
Ms. Al-Najjar, you heard before lunch we've got a bit of a timing problem.
Yeah.
So I think your explanation is very helpful. But I think if you just listen carefully to Mr. Bickford-Smith and do your best to answer it directly. So, Mr. Bickford-Smith, can you repeat the question, please?
On the 16th of September 2019, there had as yet been no findings at all, correct?
okay. No findings at all, okay.
You talk about the provisional findings of her investigation, but there is no contemporary document showing support for a finding of misconduct. And in fact, Mr. Vasselli's statement, to which I've taken you to, doesn't have anything supportive of it. And it's a simple point. You've got the chronology wrong here. Because what happens is, if we look at 3222, we see amended meeting minutes, which Ms. Tabara has sent through, and her amendments are on page 3223, and it says, on the call, SM has interrupted RS and SA. Yeah? But then if we look at...
So what date was that statement?
the 20, that, I just, wait a moment, 3223. 3223. So the covering email to that. Okay, 3219. Yeah? 23rd of September. Thanks, Alessandro, for taking the call. Please see enclosed the minutes amended.
Okay.
And we then see the minutes below, and into those, Ms. Tabara has inserted this paragraph we see in red. And there's no reference here to the questions that Ms. Tabara has asked Mr. Vaselli leading to these amendments. She just sends through these amendments. And what I'm putting to you is that this has followed on from, it has not preceded, it has followed on from your meeting with Ms. Tabara on the 16th of September, simply as a matter of chronological fact.
What I wrote here is we discussed the provisional findings of her investigation. She said that the witness evidence she had obtained to date indicate that the claimant had interrupted Mr. Sheikh and had questioned and undermined his and Mr. Akbar's competency in the presence of other colleagues. It also appeared that the claimant had spoken on the call in a condescending manner towards more senior colleagues. She therefore believed that the claimant had failed to treat colleagues fairly and with respect in line with the group's code of conduct. We agreed that if that was her eventual conclusion, an appropriate recommendation would likely be disciplinary management for the claimant. I confirm the statement as true and factual. When we are sitting, I am her people leader, I have the governance and control role, she's sharing with me her preliminary findings, and we're looking at what has been evidenced till now, and she is saying, and I am saying, this will look like going to disciplinary. I'm not talking about a final report being issued at that point, but this is the way we operate. We discuss. This is exactly what I said as an example. I assume Diana had the conversation with Aziza before Aziza sends out a draft report, before Aziza sends out a final draft. This is how we operate. You're saying there was no review at that point in time, but she's saying, I'm saying that she's already had her preliminary findings, meeting with the others.
How you operated, Ms. Al-Najjar, was that you told Ms. Tabara that you wanted the claimant put through a disciplinary, and she then rewrote the minutes and geared things towards a disciplinary investigation because that was
That's
what
what
you
you're
had
saying.
asked.
That's not what I'm saying.
And if you go to page 3671, you see the statement of Alessandro Vaselli, head of legal Islamic Bank. It's the most formal statement from him here, signed on the 10th of November 2019. But the particular point I want to take you to is on 3672. He says, there are two other relevant facts I would like to mention regarding the interview. This is point number 7. The line of questioning was leading me to provide answers which would show that SM's conduct on 5th August was aggressive and confrontational towards our colleagues. I did not agree and gave a different testimony. I highlighted the challenging conditions and episodes of conduct attributed to my business colleagues that I had to live through in Islamic banking, but there has been no subsequent follow-up or further action. And the truth of the matter, Mrs. Al-Najjar, is that you had decided to put the claimant through a disciplinary, and Miss Tabara is following your instructions, correct?
There are other witnesses that we have looked at their statement. Vaselli is not the only witness of the 5th August call. There were other witnesses. If you go to look at who was in attendance, you will find other witnesses. The statements that were taken from them all confirmed. It wasn't Vaselli versus Shiraz versus Rehan that we're looking at. So Vaselli's statement alone does not stand as the statement that will make us change the decision or decide on whether Shiraz's behavior was acceptable or not. Especially that Vaselli changed his statement. How much much do I give weight to someone who keeps changing his statement versus the consistency of the others and the corroboration. Mind you, Rehan immediately reported the behavior to Adam. It's like a file note. It was reported immediately. It wasn't reported 3 weeks later to Adam Long, Shiraz's behavior. Vaselli here saying it was leading, it's his view. He may have felt it was leading the interview, but that's only Vaselli's statement against all the other attendees of the call who shared their view of what they've experienced and witnessed Shiraz doing during the call. Shiraz was dialing in from another place and not sitting with them. They all heard Shiraz say what he said. So it's not Vaselli's statement against Rehan Sheikh. It's not Vaselli's statement against Shiraz's statement. There are other people sitting there. So when I say, based on the preliminary findings, the statements from other witnesses, this is what we may end up concluding in a final report, I will repeat it even if it happens now. I will still say the same thing. Based on the preliminary findings, if this is what is confirmed, it will mean recommendation for disciplinary. We didn't issue a final report on 16 September. I am acting within my right and my role as governance and control and Diana's people leader. She made a wrong judgment earlier by saying upheld to a statement that was inconclusive.
Well, actually, that was again later. You've got the chronology wrong, Mrs. Al-Najjar, because we can see this at 334.
It may have been that my statement on the page that we are making reference on had a wrong date by error. But this is exactly
3341.
3341.
We see the 3rd of October, a draft report. So that's again after the 16th of September and after the other email we've looked at. And the conclusion reached at that stage. So incident 1, staff alleged that on August the 5th, Mr. Sahel Akbar made a discriminatory and threatening comment. That's at the bottom of 3341. Incident 2, Mr. Shiraz Mahmood has demonstrated demeaning behaviour. Allegation 1. Upheld. Yeah? And as a result of the review, management review for Mr. Sahel, management review for Mr. Shiraz. So at that stage, this has been left classified as a low severity incident.
I think I made an email. I wrote an email to say I missed reading this, and this was an error by Diana. I made that claim on email, and this is where she retracted and she revised it. I'm stating again, there could be a mistake in stating the date in my witness statement, but I am sharing the story as it has happened and as per my recollection.
And
the typo may have been there on when I actually met and what we discussed when we met, but I am telling you exactly, and I'm confident that this is what I'm saying is what happened.
And what? Well, I put it to you, Mrs. Al-Najjar, that the best guide to what happened are what the contemporary documents show, and those emerge at 3340 to 3341. Where you send an email to Diana Tabara on 3341, can we discuss on Sunday? I thought Shiraz was supposed to go through DM, also on Sahel. Who other than Alessandro said the British piece?
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. This is exactly what I'm saying. I may have put the wrong date in my witness statement, but the emails are corroborating what I am saying as the story and what has happened. It doesn't matter. I am now following exactly what's on email. I'm sharing exactly what happened, and that's what I just said before reading it now. I told her, I missed this. How did you issue this? We discussed this before. This is not what we have discussed based on your findings. This is not what would ideally be the right outcome based on the findings. How are you concluding that it is upheld, and I wrote to her, who other than Alessandro said the piece on the British, and I quoted it. Did Suhail admit it? He didn't. So if it is just Vasili's statement against Suhail, no other witnesses, that's exactly what I've been saying again and again. How are we? I'm challenging Diana. That's my role, to challenge her. I have the right to retract a report. That's not because I'm being biased. I'm following the same principle I did with Geeta and Fatima in the Suhail and Vasili incident. When I said, Geeta, give me evidence, who has corroborated or seen what you've said? I didn't uphold Geeta and Fatima. Why would I uphold here a statement? I'm following the same, and I have the right to retract. It is our credibility ultimately.
Well, in terms of your credibility,
So
Mrs.
I mean,
Al-Najjar,
when it
your
serves
account,
Shiraz, it's fine. But when it doesn't serve Shiraz, it's not fine.
Yes.
I'm being consistent.
Ms. Al-Najjar, your role here is simply to answer counsel's questions. You're not here to argue a case.
Okay,
So just listen carefully to the questions and answer them as directly as you can.
thank you.
And when you say at paragraph 110 that there were provisional findings and based on witness interviews, that simply can't be right, because we can see that the dates of the witness interviews are around this bundle, and we can see that Mr. Akbar hadn't even had a meeting with Ms. Tabara until the 23rd of September, and we can see that from 3271. (23rd of September). So this whole narrative about, oh, well, it was the numbers of witnesses. As of the 16th of September, there's been an interview with Mr. Vasili, and there's an interview with Mr. Sheikh, and an interview with the claimant. Now, neither the claimant nor Mr. Vasili had said that the claimant had behaved inappropriately or undermined Mr. Sheikh. So the reality is, it's not a 2v1, it's a 1v2. It's just that the one person who is complaining is Mr. Sheikh, and you regard yourself as his business partner, correct? It's not about fairness here. It's about you supporting Mr. Sheikh because you knew that he wanted action taken against the claimant, correct?
No, that's not the reason. It's not because I knew Rehan wanted action taken against Shiraz.
Now, you are involved in discussions about making the claimant's role redundant in October 2019, correct?
Based on a group decision, the ICEE, we execute in ER. I don't make the decision or contribute to the decision of him being made redundant. My role is to execute a decision that comes from the business on a restructure, where a redundancy is the outcome of the restructure. In employee relations, we execute the decision.
And you put Mr. Long in touch with Ms. Bajwa, correct? On 3452, sorry, Ms. Bajwa is also looped into this. So this is a three-way email chain between you, Ms. Bajwa, correct, and Mr. Long. So you knew that there was a discussion of making the claimant's role redundant, correct?
I am aware, even before that, the ICEE would impact Shiraz's role because of the action recommendation from audit, because of other reviews, that Sharia team should not be reporting into business and they should report into compliance. That is the reason. This is not about the person. When the bank looks at a restructure, they don't look at the people, they look at the roles. And they propose the new structure based on roles. If there is a certain percentage of the role changing to the extent that new people should be considered, then they open it up for a panel interview or any other form to select the right candidate for the role based on the change in the structure and the job description. It's not about Shiraz. It could have been anyone else in this role. It is about the decision to have Sharia report into the compliance role, making the role a bigger role and not a smaller role. That's why the role became redundant and not because of Shiraz.
Now, at page 7650, you mention in the project ICEE and the claimant's redundancy, but your evidence there begins with events in September 2020. So I put it to you that as of November 2019, you knew that there was a separate, let's lose the adjective, you knew that there was the possibility of the claimant's role being made redundant, correct?
That's what I said earlier as well. I'm not changing or I'm not challenging. This information was known to ICEE project. The project delayed several months and it went from year to another year. We couldn't have told Shiraz the information because he shouldn't be knowing this information at that point in time. That, again, I take you back to what I said before the break. When I found out that the Sharia team could be conflicted reporting into business, I looked into this matter further to understand the claims that are repeatedly raised by Shiraz on the conflict of interest in Sharia reporting into business. And I was comforted when I knew the ICEE project had already addressed this in their proposal of restructure. It remains the same statement.
Now,
I was aware, and that is what gave me the confidence that the bank is operating fairly and acting on the audit recommendation.
Page 7632, the claimants, there's a section beginning the claimant's disciplinary process. Now, is it you narrate this process here? Can I ask you straightforwardly, is it your evidence that you were involved in this disciplinary process and that you were providing ER guidance for it? This is November, just to be clear about dates here. We're talking about October, November 2019. Is it your evidence that you were providing ER guidance for this process, or was it a process that was being conducted independently of you?
So for the purpose of clarity, just for my understanding, you are referring to the disciplinary process that was run by Rula Tamimi and Faisal Sha'ar?
Correct.
It was run by Faisal being the hearing manager, the decision maker, and supported by Rula Tamimi, who was supporting us from Jordan. She was an HR business partner, and she was running it with them. It was Faisal Sha'ar's ultimate decision. In a disciplinary hearing, it is the hearing manager who makes the decision, not ER. ER supports the process to ensure that a fair process was run. They don't impose or impact the outcome. It's different from an HR investigation where ER makes the decision. It is the hearing manager. So my response to you is no, I haven't intervened to the extent of giving guidance to Faisal on his outcome. He made his outcome without my intervention, or I didn't speak to Faisal before he issued the outcome.
Did you speak to Ms. Al-Tamimi about this?
Al-Tamimi, Rula may have asked me about the companion, whether the companion can be Vasselli or not, but not on the outcome of this decision. No.
Yes, I think that in fairness to you, again, you have given evidence about this. That's at 7633, page 142. You felt that it wasn't appropriate. Well, it says it was felt it was not appropriate. But was, although we, you see, the point Mrs. Al-Najjar, is that it's ambiguous in paragraph 142 about whose decision it was that the claimant couldn't be accompanied by Mr. Vaselli. And I'm just suggesting to you that it was your decision that Mr. Vaselli couldn't accompany him.
It is ER's decision to decide whether a witness is independent, a companion can attend or not. If they were already interviewed and part of a review, they cannot be companions in a process. That is the standard we operate with, and we have so many such examples. So Vaselli, I recall that Rula had to make a decision on whether Vaselli can be the companion for Shiraz. The answer is no, he cannot be a companion. Shiraz then asked if the witness statement can be given by Vaselli. This is not a process that we have during a disciplinary process. And then Vaselli provided his statement as a witness statement to support the disciplinary process in writing. It was submitted, it was taken, and Faisal had taken that into consideration, as far as I am aware, in making the outcome as well. So it was considered, Vaselli's statement was considered by Faisal Sha'ar, who had made the final outcome on this.
Well, that's a long... in terms, first, of the process question I asked you, could I please take you to 3674? I suggest that what comes out of this is that both you and Diana Tabara are saying to Ms. Al-Tamimi what these emails show is that you were against Mr. Vaselli being a companion. For example, you say, 3673, please advise Shiraz that Alessandro cannot be the companion. He may choose other companions for our review.
Yes. The reason is he was a witness in the fact-finding. He's not an independent person to this process. He cannot attend. This is consistent with our group standards, the bank group standards, not my personal decision only.
You say it's not your personal decision, but...
I mean, it's not Mirna's decision against the group standards. I am complying with the group standards. I'm acting on those bases. The companion must be an independent person, and we would say if yes or no. The standards would say for the subject colleague or the respondent or the person going through the disciplinary to present the name for evaluation. It's not taken for granted if Shiraz chooses Vaselli, Vaselli will be the companion. It will go through an evaluation.
Now, the hearing manager, you say you have...
Faisal Sha'ar.
Mr.
Faisal Abu Sha'ar.
Yes. Now, he is, it's agreed, the risk manager. Yeah.
He's a country management team member in
And
the
he
UAE.
is a part of Mr. Sheikh's leadership team, correct? We see him referred to at 2774. This is Mr. Sheikh's interview with the I3 function. Near the bottom, 4 lines up from the bottom. The risk guy from the UAE was also the global head for Islamic risk and is now part of my team.
Can I correct the statement?
Yes.
The reporting line of Faisal Abu Sha'ar is not to Rehan. That's 100%. Faisal Abu Sha'ar sits on the CMT of the UAE CEO of the bank and not the GIB. There is a difference. He has no reporting line into Rehan. There is no conflict. He does not report into Rehan.
And do you agree that you yourself there was a discussion about who would take the case, and you were actually asked yourself whether you would take it, but you didn't do so. Is that correct? Or at least it isn't clear to me here, which is what I need to ask.
No, I would have not taken it. That's why it was assigned to Rula. We needed someone completely independent from the case.
And
Rula came from Jordan and was not part of any interviews or fact-finding or managing this matter in any form. She was assigned to the UAE to support ER. Her role is an HR business partner in Jordan. She came, she supported us for a few weeks, several weeks, on a short-term assignment, and then went back to Jordan. She has left the bank now.
But we see that when it comes to the kind of difficult questions that can come up, as you will know in disciplinary and other hearings, when it comes to the fundamental question of can Mr. Vasselli attend as a companion, it's not Mazal Tamimi who makes the decision, it's you and Mr. Barra.
I'll explain why.
No, but do you just agree with that as a proposition of fact about who made the decision?
Rula will not know if he's independent or not. So because she's not sitting in the country and did not come across the history or the cases, the independence of the companion will only be known to us. So if she consulted with me, I would have said I don't think he is an independent companion. However, we can take the statement. He cannot be present to give his statement and cross-examined. That's not the process that we follow. But he can give his statement, and he did give his statement as part of Shiraz's submission before the hearing, and Faisal Abu Shahar did take that into consideration before issuing his final outcome and decision on the disciplinary.
At page 3711, we move to the issue of the P3 rating given to Mr. Mahmood in 2019. And we see here an email chain which we go through. It starts, it may be easy for you to start at the bottom. So we have feedback for Mr. Mahmood from Mr. Tamuri, Mr. Khan, Mr. Vasselli, Mr. Mallory. So just to deal with Mr. Tamuri, thorough gentleman who understands requirements of governance and compliance. The court is familiar with this, so I'm just going to give you an opportunity if you want to look at this, but I don't believe it relates to your answer, but I just want you to have the chance to see it. So what happens is Mr. Long asks you for advice, and he says that he's entered a rating of 4D in the P3 system. Based on his assessment, he's not completed all objectives in the system, and based on the verbal feedback of key business stakeholders throughout the year, and my observations of the way he works. So he's reaching out to you for advice, correct?
Yes.
Was it not of concern to you that there was a 4D rating being given, being based on two things only: verbal feedback of key business stakeholders and manager observations, when the only written feedback, which is cut and pasted below, it is positive? That was not of concern to you, is that correct?
It is not for ER to make a decision on a performance rating. This is exactly like the 365 feedback argument. It is based on meeting objectives and how they interact with other stakeholders. It is not for me in ER to make this decision. If Shiraz appeals the decision on the performance rating, it will come to ER to review the appeal. But I cannot be part of the decision. And I think my response to Adam is aligned to my view that I'm sharing right now. I said, hi Adam, apologies, I have just seen this now. If you feel that Shiraz has not met his objectives, then 4 is a reasonable rating. 4 in our rating means there are objectives that have not been met in the bank's rating. I'm giving him advice based on his statement. I would assume that you have met with him and had a performance review meeting where you would take him through the areas of concern and development. So if you decided 4, because he didn't meet all his objectives, the assumption is that you've had the conversation and shared where he failed. With respect to the valued behavior rating D, in my view, it's a fair rating considering that SM has not met his objectives and has gone through a DM process. The disciplinary process here is also written on the outcome letter. Your sanction will impact your P3.
But
It
what?
will usually impact the values rating, the fact that he's going through a process. Now, we will be concluding the DM process by end of week, post the public holiday or early. Let me know if you wish. So if there is a sanction issued against him, give him a D if you feel necessary. ER will be part of reviewing the performance review granted by Adam if Shiraz appeals to employee relations.
So the position, in fact, here is that you know the results of the disciplinary process is going to be a sanction of some kind, even before that has happened, correct?
Not correct. That's not what I'm saying. I said he has gone through a DM process. Our templates, our group templates are very clear. Someone who's gone through a DM, there is a sanction, it will impact the values rating. I'm saying he's going, and I'm saying the outcome will be issued, so it's fine. Wait till the outcome and then make your decision.
That's not what you're saying, is it?
If it is,
The truth, Mrs. Al-Najjar, is you're the person pulling the strings here, aren't you?
you are making this assumption. That's not true. That's not a factual statement.
The disciplinary outcome isn't actually produced until the 2nd of February 2020, is it? We
There
can see
were
it at
delays.
3929.
I would ask you to look into the reasons why there were delays in the actual outcome being issued.
And one of the things that can happen in a disciplinary process, you agree, is that allegations can be dismissed, correct? It can be said this allegation is not upheld. That's one possible outcome of a disciplinary hearing, correct?
Yes. No action taken and not no allegation upheld. It would be no action taken based on the findings. Sometimes it's low in severity to the extent that it does not require a form of a sanction in terms of written warning. It may be coaching.
Now, there is then a, to go on to another point, Mr. Mahbub is assigned to review the claimant's concerns, but one of the reasons for why he's been subject to disciplinary action and a performance review plan, etc., PIP, sorry, is victimisation, correct? And Mr. Mahbub is a peer of yours from a different region, correct?
Can you repeat the question? I don't understand the question.
Mr. Mahbub, Ibn Mahbub, Masood Ibn Mahbub, do you know who he is?
Yes, he's my counterpart.
He's your counterpart, and he is assigned to review the claimant's victimisation complaints, correct?
Correct.
Now, you held a call with Mr. Mahbub at the start of his investigations on the 15th of February.
I was being interviewed by Masoud to share my statement. I was being interviewed by Masoud and not I initiated this. He called me as part of an interview. He was interviewing me.
And we can see the note for that at 4055. And you say at the top, this is an accurate reflection of our call. I will arrange for the documentation to be shared with you. You then say, point number 1, Shiraz has a history of raising complaints repetitively. The bank has already conducted 4 to 5 separate investigations, including a thorough one by Simon Bucket, where all his concerns were unsubstantiated. His concern about victimisation was also raised earlier and unsubstantiated. Now, can you please explain to us where it is that it was found that that victimisation complaint was unsubstantiated?
My statement here was based on my understanding of Project Barossa.
His disciplinary action was based on a detailed investigation which proved that his behaviour towards senior stakeholders were disrespectful and derogatory. You were not in the disciplinary panel. Alessandro Vasselli stated during investigation that Shiraz's behaviour was disrespectful. Recently, he has provided another statement contradicting his own previous statement. Possibilities are that Vasselli may have been pressurised by Shiraz, or they may have colluded. So this is quite strong stuff about Mr. Vasselli and Mr. Mahmood. Do you agree?
Sorry?
Those are quite strong allegations to make against Mr. Mahmood and Mr. Vasselli.
That's my, at that point, on 14 Feb 2020, that was my conclusion. That's my understanding. That's my statement on what I felt from the history since I have been made aware of everything.
And there isn't any, when you say, you keep coming back to this point about how he's contradicted his own previous statement, but what we've seen here is that when we go right back to the very first statement Mr. Vasselli gives, that doesn't say anything about Mr. Mahmood being angry, confrontational, disrespectful, does it?
Because the first interview with him was not about the incident of the conference call. It was about the incident after the call. And Shiraz wouldn't have been part of that interview. That's why there wouldn't be a comment on the conference call. It was about the Sohail Akbar conversation. So it is impossible for it to...
But this just simply not... You can't make the doc... Just look at 3205, please, yeah? Sorry to go back to it, but this is a very important point. 3205. Questions. 1.
Date, please. 2nd September.
2nd September.
Right? It's the date of the meeting. Vasselli was interviewed several times. This is 2nd September. It's very important that this is before we were looking into the second allegation.
Yes,
this
but
is
look at
strictly
what...
about Sohail Akbar and Vasselli. Why would they bring up Shiraz in this?
Can you look at the questions that are on the page? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Mrs. Al-Najjar. But it's actually all about this meeting. Question 1. Have you attended the meeting on BMA draft report discussion? This is page 3205. On the 5th of August. Who was leading the meeting? What are your views on the tone of the meeting? How would you describe the engagement level of the attendees? Is there anything in particular you'd like to share about the same meeting, or anything that has happened in relation to the same meeting? So he is being asked about this meeting, isn't he?
And he mentions there was an element of confrontation due to the exchange of views at the meeting on 5th August.
And if we go back to 4055, where is the evidence here for Mr. Vasselli being pressurised?
That's my conclusion. I'm sharing my statement based on my feedback and conclusion. I'm being interviewed. I'm sharing my views at this point. It's 14 Feb 2020. In February, I was interviewed sometime.
Point number 4, the disciplinary. there's been a delay, it's not a breach of procedure. Point number 5, Shiraz will be getting a 4D rating this year, and very likely he will raise the issue again. That comes out of your email exchange with Mr. Long that we were just looking at, correct?
Yes. And again, that's my conclusion. I knew, and that's when I explained the 4D. I said Shiraz can appeal the 4D rating. It's within his right to do so. It doesn't mean we are going to manage his appeal of the rating, but he can appeal. It's his people leader's decision. Anyone managing this case or looking at this case will definitely know that Shiraz will not accept it.
6, Shiraz's role is going to be at risk of redundancy due to restructuring within compliance. Very likely that he will again raise victimisation claim, although this is completely unrelated. HOHR, that's Pavneet, has independently verified that his role will be changing substantially. Then you say you have transparently discussed the performance, disciplinary and potential redundancy issue with Simon Bucket, who was satisfied that this is not a result of victimisation. So I'm suggesting to you that there, what you're
That's
saying...
Project Barossa, when you told me the victimization piece. That's
Can you provide... I mean, there is no minute here of you discussing this issue with Mr. Bucket and him reaching a conclusion. That insofar as Barossa reached any conclusion, it was that it didn't have the evidence to reach a conclusion.
That was my understanding, and that's why I mentioned. I would still say the same thing.
8, Rahan is not satisfied, that's Mr. Sheikh, with the support and contribution from him. That's why Rahan has asked active support from Mr. Long. And then Shiraz was moved from Islamic banking floor to compliance floor to avoid further escalation of issues created by his own behaviour.
That's it. I'm just saying exactly what it is.
Sharia reporting line is being changed. Details could not be shared as he's with Shiraz as he's conflicted, in brackets, as his role will be impacted. Now, just put it to you, Ms. Al-Najjar, that what you've effectively done here is that before Mr. Mahbub has even got started, you have you have flooded him with highly negative, prejudicial material about Mr. Mahmood, correct?
No, this is your conclusion. For me, I was stating it as it has happened and based on what I have experienced and facts. I do not believe that Masoud's decision would be or was influenced by my statement. I was sharing my statement. I was not influencing Masoud. It is not me putting in negativity. This is the fact.
Don't you think this is... Mr. Mahbub is meant to be conducting an independent review, correct?
He will hear me and hear many others. He reviewed the projects as part of his review. He looked at everything as part of his review, and he would have made the decision based on his review. He could have disregarded my statement based on his review of the BMA, Project Barossa, the report from ER in the UAE, the disciplinary process. He had all the documents available to him. He has a say in this. It's not that because I said so, he will do so. We have many cases where Masoud managed appeals for the AME region, and they reinstated colleagues, for example. It doesn't mean because it's coming from my region and because I have a view and the panel has a view, they cannot change it. Masoud is independent in this review, otherwise he wouldn't have been given this matter.
And I suggest to you that you describe this material you've provided as your factual evaluation of the situation, correct?
That's my statement. I'm not changing it. This is exactly what I would have
Would
said.
you agree you had given similar factual evaluations to other people with whom you had had meetings over the course of the events we've
It all
discussed today?
depends on the time of that conversation and what was evidence and established during that conversation. So I cannot answer your question with a yes. It all depends. You give me an example, I'll tell you what I said.
Let's give an example about the going back to the conversation you have on the 16th of September with Diana Tabara about whether there should be disciplinary management. Was your input similar to this?
It is conditional if the findings suggest that it happened, then a disciplinary would be a recommendation. It is conditional. Even in my statement, there is an if in the last sentence of the paragraph.
With regards to the question of the claimant's complaint about a racist remark in August 2019.
It wasn't evidenced, so my recommendation would be it is inconclusive. I state by that it's not me influencing. I'm sharing my view under my governance and control hat, and it is my job. I'm her people leader. I cannot accept that she puts a recommendation on no basis. It is inconclusive. Where is her evidence that this was said? This is exactly what happened when Aziza upheld something against Shiraz which wasn't conclusive.
So it's your position, just to be clear, that what you're doing in these instances is you are overruling people who you think have simply got it wrong, correct?
It's within my right, yes.
Your Honour, that may be a convenient moment. I think I will get done today.
How much longer do you think you'll be?
I think I've got an hour. No, sorry, 50 minutes is the answer.
50 minutes, all right. Well, thank you. We're going to go a bit longer than we can usually do in one sitting, so we'll take a short break. Now, Ms. Najjar, are you okay to come back and continue for another 50 minutes or so in, say, 10 minutes' time?
Yes, sure.
All right. Well, adjourn for 10. So let's come back at 3:30, shall
If
we?
they need more time, I'm happy to stay.
No. 3:30. We'll adjourn till 3:30.
50 minutes as in 5-0.
Yes,
Five.
yes, 5-0. 5-0.
No, 5-0, I'm afraid.
Right.
Yes, all right. All right, we'll adjourn until 3:30.
Thank you.
seated, please. Yes, Mr. Bickford-Smith.
Now, continuing with you and Mr. Mahbub, there are a series of further communications between you and him. This is an email of, 4161. And we see here the email below, Ms. Bajwa.
So did you say 4611?
No, it was 4161.
Oh, sorry.
So the bottom of the chain, this is the appeal of the disciplinary outcome. You then forward on to Mr. Mahbub is in copy, and Mr. Mahbub says, "Hi Myrna, I wanted to wish the best of luck to Pavneet for taking up this appeal, but thought that might scare her, smiley face. Just FYI, my review into Shiraz's concern is on hold, now as he's also raised conflict against me, as well as the ER function. I've gone back to Rashir and awaiting their feedback, kind of in love with AME as it appears, take care, Myrna, etc." So the position is, there are very warm words between you and Mr. Mahbub. Both of you, so you say at 4159, "Hi Masood, join the club. In my view, it's very sad that SM spends most of his time complaining instead of focusing on his work. I feel like I need to have a call with Rashira. What are your thoughts? This is an example of how a problem employee continues to misuse our systems and channels, and we continue to allow them." So, can I just ask you this? By this point, how many personal interactions had you had with Mr. Mahmood?
In what sense?
How many times had you met him and spoken to him face to face?
Masood? He's in Hong Kong.
No, Mr. Mahmood.
Shiraz. Sorry, I said Mahmoud. Like I said initially, I met him in the lobby once, and just as part of the groups in town halls, I would see him but not be talking to him.
So the position is you have taken very strongly against Mr. Mahmood, who you've only met once or twice in passing, correct?
The position I took based on the several months, years, of managing cases from Shiraz and looking at the outcomes of his grievances. I think that is where I got to the conclusion where I got to. I was no longer involved in anything related to Shiraz at that point.
How many times by this stage, that's March the 19th, 2020, how many times had you met Mr. Sheikh?
As part of my interactions with him as an HR business partner, it would have been all on calendar. I don't know, I didn't count, but that was part of my work as an HR business partner. I would meet him maybe every 3 weeks once or once a month. It depends.
And when we talk here about the claimant's complaints, which Mr. Mahbub is talking about, into the ER function.
You said Mahbub or Mahmoud?
Mr.
You're talking about Masood or Shiraz?
Masood. I'll call him Masood without any disrespect, just for the purposes of the remainder of this afternoon. The concerns that Mr. Mahmood had about the ER function, and its entrenched position against him, have been proven correct by the emails and documents we've gone through today. Because what we see, don't we, is that there is, behind the scenes, a strong drive against Mr. Mahmood, correct?
That's not correct.
And now, the claimant was given a written warning as a result of the disciplinary. Now, he appealed that decision, and we can see his appeal letter on 4202. And this was assigned to Mr. Zulu, and we've already seen Ms. Bajwa being assigned as HR support, correct?
Correct.
Do you agree that a disciplinary appeal process is meant to be an independent process, correct?
Correct.
Now, 4157. Mr. Zulu on the 18th of May has raised some detailed points or some questions. Now, you are sent this email on by Ms. Bajwa. On the 19th of May. Sonny has the following questions. He's now looped out of this. He's not in copy. Would you have some time later today to have a call with us? Thanks. And then you say at the top of page 4156, this was managed by Rula Al-Tamimi, who was, to recap, the person ostensibly managing the disciplinary process. But you don't forward the email on to her, although she was a secondee, correct? But what you do here is to give your views on the points as follows, and we have a rebuttal over a page, correct?
I just want to explain that Rula left the bank. So there's a giving my point of view. Rula not only is she worked with us on a short-term assignment, but she also left the bank. She works for another employer now. So I provided my views to help Pavneet.
So those views are unequivocal. The point he makes is not relevant to the appeal of sanction. A behavioural issue was identified against him. How it was identified is irrelevant. He raised a grievance that was not upheld. During the same grievance review, the behavioural issue, etc. And
I share an example as well to
and you then say,
explain.
Just wait for the question, Ms. Almajar.
I would strongly recommend not to accept this point as part of the appeal, as it is not relevant. So you are, I put it to you, seeking to influence the outcome of this appeal hearing, correct?
I'm providing my advice. She's coming to me for advice, and I'm sharing advice. If it was any other situation, the same circumstances, I would give the same answer, and this is why I gave an example. because I'm explaining the principle applied here. It's not about Shiraz as such. It's about the principle applied in validating the grounds for appeal. In our group standards, we have the appeal process. It doesn't immediately go to an appeal hearing. It first goes through appeal validation. We look at the grounds for appeal, and this is what's happening. I'm explaining the grounds for appeal from a principal perspective. Again, Pavneet and the hearing manager or the appeal person can decide to consider the guidance or not. I am not the decision maker here.
Now, at page 7645, which is your witness statement, 177A.
Which page, sorry?
My apologies, 7645. Now, can you explain where in your email at 4156 you say what you say in paragraph 177A? Because 177A says to me, I gave her my views on Mr. Zulu's queries as follows, and you refer to 4156, 4157. But when you say on 4156 here, during the same grievance review, the behaviour at issue was reported by one of the interviewees. This is what's called other findings in a review. The other finding was further reviewed because of its seriousness and the concern was substantiated. Do you see that in the first substantive paragraph on page 4156?
Sorry, what is the question? I'm not clear.
Okay. Let's go to 4156. Yeah? You say, during the same grievance review, the behaviour at issue was reported by one of the interviewees. This is what's called other findings in a review. The other finding was further reviewed because of its seriousness and the concern was substantiated. Whereas in your witness statement, in your witness statement at 7645177A, you say, I explained that Mr. Sheikh has flagged the issue of the claimant's conduct with Mr. Long on the morning of the 6th of August 2019, the day after the meeting. I said that Mr. Sheikh had done the same by email, although I subsequently found out that he had called Mr. Long. My point was that Mr. Sheikh had raised the issue of the claimant's conduct with Mr. Long well before he knew anything about the complaint the claimant had made. But what you're suggesting, in fact, in 4156 is something different, namely that after the claimant raises a grievance, during the grievance review, the behaviour at issue was reported by one of the interviewees. But do you understand that the review of the claimant's grievance didn't commence until late August 2020? Whereas what you're talking about in your witness statement is something happening on the 5th of August.
Well, you said late August 2020, you meant late August 2019.
Late August 2019. Well, okay. The point I put to you, Mrs. Al-Najjar, is that 177A provides a different explanation of the chronology from what is in fact stated at 4156. That's the question. Do you have any explanation for that difference?
I think when I was making that statement, it's more about giving the response without names on 4156 versus me talking about what I was thinking when I was writing what's on 4156, thinking of the names and the people.
And the true chronology is that there is only an investigation into Mr. Mahmood's conduct in the meeting of the 5th of August. That only gets commissioned on the 2nd of September. So the correct chronology is that Mr. Mahmood makes his complaint. That goes through to the I3 team. It then comes through to you while you're on holiday. You then pick it up when you're back from holiday. And then several days later, we see an escalation of Mr. Sheikh's concerns about what had happened on the 5th of August. So I put it to you that among the reasons for the disciplinary of the claimant is precisely the fact that he has made a complaint about what Mr. Akbar said to Mr. Vaseli.
That's not true. When I asked for the investigation to be initiated, it was because of the conduct that was reported with specifics, with a date, with the names of the witnesses.
And what you haven't said in this email to Ms. Bajwa for factoring into Mr. Zulu and the advice she gives him, what you haven't said in this is that the recommendation for disciplinary management followed you overturning the initial view that there shouldn't be anything. There was no initial...
I don't think it's relevant at all, because what matters is the final outcome in a report and not preliminary findings, or what matters is what is exactly in the final report that was issued. That is what matters. It would have been irrelevant.
And then when you say, as per the investigation report, what you're saying is all the previous drafts of that are irrelevant. It's just the draft that you have factored into that's relevant. Is that what you're saying?
It is the final draft that is issued by the employee relations that should be counted.
You say, point number 3, you would have to validate the same. As per the investigation report, the allegation incident that was reported against him was confirmed by all the witnesses who were present during the incident, and they've all confirmed it. Note, if it is Alessandro and he changes his statement from the one provided during the original review, then I would raise a concern about his independence in the statement given. For your information, Alessandro has changed his statement during the original review once. He has given 2 different and opposing statements. Anyhow, I would not jump into conclusions. I suggest to you, Ms. Zanajal, what you are doing is precisely jumping into a conclusion. In fact, you're jumping into a series of conclusions. The first conclusion is that when Mrs. Tabara initially sent Mr. Vaseli notes, those notes were entirely accurate. The second conclusion you're jumping into is that Mr. Vaseli's corrections to those notes were inaccurate. The third conclusion you're jumping into is that when there's a further call, again, Mrs. Tabara's comments, additions are an accurate account of the interview. You're making a whole series of assumptions, aren't you, without ever having spoken to Mr. Vaseli about it, correct?
No, that's not the case. I spoke to Diana, and based on my conversation with Diana and her sharing of what she has said to me, the fact that Vaseli changed his statement is what I am concluding on and giving advice on. I am not making conclusions without a basis. I am looking at the facts and making a conclusion.
But you never spoke to Mr. Vaseli about those facts, did you?
I didn't have to speak to Vaseli about it. I'm looking at what I have and making my conclusion.
And you're again seeking to rule out Mr. Alessandro. You're saying if he wants Alessandro, then he would be considered as not appropriate to attend, in my view, as he was one of the witnesses. So the position here...
He cannot be a companion. I stand on that position. He cannot be a companion if he was part of the investigation review. And and a witness.
So the position is you are one of the most senior ER leaders in the bank, yeah? And you are coming out very strongly here against Mr. Mahmood's appeal. That was an extraordinary thing for you to do, wasn't it?
No. I based it on a series of findings, series of investigations, series of incidents raised by Shiraz. We're talking here about May 2020. Matters has started way long ago. So I am making now a statement after an experience of many months, and not just a month or two.
And the
It
view...
wouldn't have been fair if this was something said after a month or two.
Well,
Or
let's...
from one report. We're talking here about BMA, Barossa. We're talking about the first investigation, the second investigation. We're talking about people giving feedback, the people leaders' feedback, the people leaders' rating. We're talking about so many things that have factored into this.
Well, you talk about a series of events, and you say it wouldn't have been a fair conclusion to reach after 1 month. Now, we went through earlier how you dealt with the complaints that reached you in February 2019. Now,
Which one specifically, please?
it's the two, well, there are 4 complaints. There are 2 ladies who come to you, and there are also 2 anonymous email complaints, correct?
So I'm clear on the Gita and the Fatima.
And
the speak-up cases that have come through.
And we know that by June 2019, those complaints have not been upheld. That is the email chain at 2478, which we looked at earlier, but you should feel free to go there again. Okay? This is Aziza Dada's June 2019 report. Yes? Now,
which page again?
2478. Yeah?
They were not upheld after my review and intervention.
Now, one thing that Ms. Dada doesn't address at all in her report is the content of the emails at 1900. Can you please go to that? So this is an email from Devil's Advocate 222016. Yeah? It's an anonymous and very strong complaint. And then there's another one at 1909.
Can I read the 1900, please?
Yes.
So I've read it now. I would like to understand when you say Aziza did not address it, in what sense? Because there is a reason, and I need to explain. You mentioned Aziza did not address the speak up.
You've read it. There's another one at 1909, which I'd like you to look at before I ask you the question. 1909. It will take you some time to read these, but it's going to be better than you doing it during the question. So, the question that Ms. Dada does not address is whether the two emails you've just looked at and the two complaints by Geeta and Fatima had been coordinated. Do you see that there is a fairly obvious similarity in the content of these complaints?
Yes, and but they wouldn't have qualified for review because they don't have specific incidents. They are general. They are themes. They are just stating how one feels, but we don't know who this individual is, and we don't have timelines around it. We don't have specific incidents. We don't go fishing for incidents and information. We don't go on a fishing expedition in a fact-finding review. They seem, when one reads it, they seem to be the same themes, the same issues, but without specific incidents.
And these are sent to you on page 1904. From the speaking up function. And your decision is that these are out of scope, correct?
You've read my decision on this?
No, it's a question. I haven't read your decision.
No, I mean, you're telling me this was my decision because you read it somewhere?
No.
Or you're asking me?
I'm asking you.
So at first instance, we would...
I think to be fair to the witness, he did say this was sent to the witness, and we know there are emails to that effect.
Yes, sorry, 1904. You should be at 1904. Are you at 1904?
Yeah.
This is an email. Good morning, Myrna. We received two disclosures, one attached and one below. Yeah? Who raised HR-related concerns on an employee. We've assessed this matter to be outside the scope of the Speaking Up programme. Could you kindly advise if ER will be accepting this matter? Yes? If it helps you, do you want to look at 1906? It should be another copy of the same document, yeah?
Okay, so what is the question again?
The question is, if you had read these emails, you should have quite literally put 2 and 2 together. You should have seen that what we have here are 4 complaints being made against the claimant in January 2019, early February 2020, which are based on a visceral personal hostility to the claimant. Did you not consider the question of whether it might be the claimant who was the victim of a campaign against him in the unit? Did that even cross your mind?
We don't operate like that. That's not how we operate. It's like asking who has sent this and we want to investigate who sent that. We don't. We receive speak-ups. It's either that it will qualify for a review based on the information given or it doesn't qualify. But we do not operate like that.
And I put it to you that the appropriate thing for the bank, you say the bank doesn't operate like that, but I've got to put this question to you anyway. The appropriate thing for the bank to do would have been to have investigated what had occurred as against the claimant.
That's not how we operate. So I wouldn't confirm
And
what you're
there
saying
were-
as what we should have done.
There were red flags here in terms of references to him as a colonial cop, references to his English nationality, references to a whole series of personal things which were completely irrelevant in the workplace.
It is someone's view. They have the right to share their views. We don't even hold disclosures accountable, or we don't look for who has said what because we don't take action. This is a speak-up channel. We don't want to create fear around what is being raised through the speak-up channel. We don't stop people so they don't worry about retaliation if they share their views. This is somebody's view clearly that is being shared. The bank has a duty to establish facts, but we never even look into who has sent this or to take action against someone who has sent this. So I wouldn't.
But when Mr. Mahmood in August 2019 makes complaints about discriminatory conduct, that is held against him by you, is it not?
In what sense specifically?
It is after that you're putting him through a disciplinary, correct?
That's not true. He is going through disciplinary because of his behavior during a conversation in a conference call. If he didn't have that behavior in that conference call that was happening and he did not act the way he did, he wouldn't be investigated or going through a disciplinary. If it wasn't established as facts, he wouldn't have gone through disciplinary.
And another key issue.
I didn't create the 5th August conference call. It wasn't a scheme to drag him into a call and a plan for that to happen. I refuse your statement.
Well, that's not what I'm putting to you. I haven't said that to you.
You're saying I did that to him like victimization, and that I haven't done
No,
that.
what I'm saying is that the choice to take whatever, the choice to put the claimant through a disciplinary management process arising out of the 5th of August meeting is your choice, correct?
It is the recommendation that is proportionate to the findings. It is not about Mirna and Shiraz. It could have been any other employee who has spoken in a disrespectful manner, in a derogatory manner to anyone else, and the finding would be not compliant with the code of conduct and ethics, not respecting other colleagues, recommendation for disciplinary.
And
This is consistent with how we look at that same behavior. It's not about him being taken through an investigation because he raised the Sohail Akbar and Vaselli. It just so happened to be that Rehan flagged it immediately after the call to Adam and then later on shared it with me on email.
And
I cannot close my eyes to something that comes to me that is about conduct with specific incidents, specific people. This speak up here doesn't have specific people. I don't know who's raising it. It's an anonymous disclosure raising it. I have no one to consider as scheming against Shiraz. And I don't follow this process, nor anyone else follows this process across the bank. This is a speak up. This is an industry norm.
And you have correctly said it's Mr. Sheikh who raises this with you later in September. It's Mr. Sheikh who has, all the way back in January, it's Mr. Sheikh who has raised with Mr. Sheikh and or Mr. Akbar, who have said there are complaints against Mr. Mahmood. Do you accept that what you have done here is that, having been told things by Mr. Sheikh, you have taken a series of actions against the claimant, correct?
Not
It's off the
correct.
back of that.
That's not correct.
And you-
Because I act as per my job requirement. If someone is reported as wanting to raise a grievance, they're welcome to meet with me and raise a grievance. If someone has experienced a situation, an incident that is known to us and specific of poor conduct and disrespect, it is our job to look into it. Shiraz never came to me directly and I turned him down. He never came to me and sat with me and reported specific incidents and I turned my back to it. Vaseli never came to me and reported specific incidents and I turned my back to it. If I come across something and I am confident that these are potential incidents that need to be reviewed, I will request for a review.
And what you have been in the business of from September 2019 all the way through to the claimant's eventual dismissal. Your evidence, just to be clear, is you weren't involved in the dismissal process, correct?
I did not make that decision.
Your role ends really with Mr. Masood, yeah? And your role in this process, suggests to you, is to try and get the claimant out of the bank successfully using your knowledge of the bank's processes, correct?
That's not correct.
And
I had not ever had an intention of getting him out. It's not personal.
could you,
We need
well,
to be careful on how we are positioning this.
well, could you please
If
look
it's
at
a
full...
redundancy, I will follow a redundancy. If there is a request from business to effect a mutual separation agreement, I will guide the business as such. If someone is coming to me to ask me on how do we look at this, I'm going to give my view. But I'm not telling Pavneet here or Faisal Abu Sha'ar or Masood, and I'm not dictating an outcome. I am answering based on the question coming to me.
Look at 4438, please, Mrs. Al-Najjar. 4438. You can bet he won't go easy.
Can I read it, please?
Please do. So for the younger members of the audience who are less aware of all of these emojis, we have here a series of laughing faces, correct? That's what these emoji symbols are for, correct?
on 438, 4438.
4438. Yeah, Your Honour, this is a...
I can't see emojis.
yes, I should explain this. When it says at the bottom ROFI,
Oh, okay,
ROF,
that's
yeah,
that's,
that's
yeah. Okay. And what's that an acronym for? Your submission?
rolling on the floor laughing. This is a personal matter for you, Mrs. Al-Najjar, isn't it? It's about getting the claimant out of the bank, correct?
That's not correct.
I have no further questions, Your Honour.
Thank you. Inspector Smith, Mr. Setti, do you re-examine?
Yes, very, very briefly, Your Honour. Mrs. Al-Najjar, you were taken to the Diana Tabara's interview with Mr. Vaselli. Do you remember being taken to that document, and you were asked a series of questions about it? And you said, and you wanted to make, and you were making the point that there were also other witnesses in addition to Mr. Vaselli who had been interviewed by Diana Tabara. And can I therefore just seek to get your evidence in relation to that, please? So, I think in order, there were clearly other people interviewed that we know. Mr. Vaselli, we know, was interviewed on the 2nd of September. I'll take these chronologically. 2nd of September 2019. We see at page 3199. Can I ask you to go to that?
Yeah.
I don't think these documents are controversial, Your Honour. With my learned friend's consent, is he content for me to take the witness to the minutes of different interviews?
I'm content for my learned friend to take the witness to a page. I'm not content for my learned friend to take the witness to specific pages. To specific bits within a page.
Well, unless you took the witness there yourself.
So yeah, exactly.
All right.
Well, no, the point is that the witness wanted to, indicated that there were other individuals interviewed as part of Diana Tabara's process.
Well, the documents will speak for themselves, won't they? If you
They have, but I want to make sure these documents are in evidence.
Yes, certainly.
Well,
And it's important.
I do say that when I attempted to do this with Mr. Mahmood, I wasn't allowed to do
No,
it.
it's very different.
Okay. Well,
Very different indeed.
I'm not going to object strongly. I'm not going to. I'll let Mr. Setti.
Thank you. So, I think it's uncontroversial that we see at page 3199 through to 3202. Can you just explain to the court what we see there at 3199 to 3202?
You're just being asked for a general description of the document.
Yeah.
You're not being asked to identify the contents.
Yep. Just in your own words, what do you see? What's your understanding of pages 3199 to 3202?
These are the minutes that were sent to Vaselli based on the interview that Diana had with Vaselli, and comments on the same minutes, asking Vaselli to put the input.
Thank you. And I think we see in the Your Honour, if you see at page 3199 at the top, the attachment to Diana Tabara's email indicates minutes_av.docx. which indicates what the attachment is, and then I believe we see the attachment at 3200 to 32202. Is that right? The minutes.
Yes.
So that's version 1, the original version that Dan Tabara sent. Then at 3203 to 3207, so, and Your Honour, if you just note these pages, 3203 to 3207, what do we now see here?
So this is Vaseli now responding to the minutes after 10 days and sharing his
Yes.
second statement against the first statement.
Okay.
This is where he shares his updates.
So we see his amendments to be at 3205 to 3207.
Yeah, and this is aligned with what I said, that
You're just being asked to identify the documents.
Yeah, this is
Well,
where
it
he
would be
shares
helpful,
his-
Judge, if this, in her own words she explains why the relevance of it to what she was saying.
So this is where the witness, after reading the statement, can add, and that's what I said earlier, they can choose to add to what they've said, they can choose to amend what they've said, they can choose to state anything to correct an interpretation. And this is what Vaseli has done in the version.
Well, we've seen this version about 3 times. during
This
the course
one?
of the day.
That's
Yeah,
what I
this
meant,
one,
that he changed
by
his statement.
my own friend. This was taken to
That's what I
cross-examination.
meant when he kept changing his statement.
Yes, you
It is up
were
to him.
answering questions about him changing his evidence.
I always repeated that.
Well,
Yes.
just on that, Ms. Najjar, you regard this as a change in his statement, do you? Because it doesn't correspond to the statement that...
Yes, because he's adding stuff and changing it. Yeah.
But that was the reason it was sent to him, to,
Yes.
to invite him to...
Yes, I'm coming on to
But
Judge. This
when
is
it changes completely from this happened versus this didn't happen, that's a change in the whole state of the case.
All right.
so. This is this version 2 of the minutes is the first time Mr. Vaseli makes changes to the notes. Then we see at a version 3 at 3208 to 3212. You go there, please. 3208. So 3208, what do we see there, please?
Diana added another question and asked Vaseli to respond.
And then I think we see minutes from page 3210 to 3212. So these are version 3.
Well, so that's not a version from Mr. Vaseli, is it? This document that you've taken us to, that's a version from...
So now he's answering an additional question from Diana and responding
Yes.
to
All
it.
right. So where do we
Yes,
see
and you
that?
see version 3, Judge. If you look at the top of page 3208,
Yes.
the attachment there, you see dot or underscore v.3 in at the top of the page.
Yes. But this is the email that I'm looking at is an email asking a question. That's not a version from Mr. Vaseli.
The attachment is at 3210 to 3212.
I see.
That's now version 3 of the minutes, and you see the amends that were made in this version.
Well, I'm not following that at all, because the version I'm looking at 3210, that's got a question. It doesn't.
I think the question
have an
from
answer.
Ms. Tabara appears self-explanatorily at page 3211. So the question's built into, the comment is built into the minutes there.
Well, I'm just not following it. Because there's a comment in the... Just
If I
sit
may,
down, sit
you
down.
may go quicker, Mr. Bigford-Smith.
Is there anything on your mind that you want to share with us? Is there anything in particular that you would like to share about the same meeting or anything that has happened in relation to the same meeting? This is where Diana says the question was
Where are
whether...
you reading from now, Ms. Najjar?
3211.
3211.
Nobody's suggesting, Judge, that this version 3 is another version of Mr. Vaseli's position.
Well, you are by calling it version 3. You are.
It's described as version the minutes version 3 in the attachment to
All right.
Mr. Tabara's.
Right, but you're not proposing that this is a third statement from Mr. Vaselli?
No, no.
Right, well, I understand that now.
No, and then the difficulty is that there are 6 versions. Can we go to page 3213, please? And the note here, Judge, for the record, is 3213 through to 3218. So can you just explain what we see there?
Another version, a response from Vaselli, again changing the statement.
And at the top of the page on 3213, we can read
Version
that
4.
it refers to it as version 4. And then can you tell the court what we see at pages 3219 to 3225?
Again, version 5.
Well, sorry, just let me look at the changes. The changes are at 3217, are they? The changes in what you're calling version 4.
Yeah. And then there's version 5.
Just bear with us for a
Just
moment.
bear with me.
3216 is where version 4 minutes commence,
Yes.
and the
And
changes
the
are at
changes made, you say
3217.
by Mr. Vaselli are at 3217, are they?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
And then can I ask you to go to 3219, and that document goes on till 3225. What do we see there?
Version 5. More changes to the statement. I felt weird that SA referred to SM as being my friend. The comment was something as, I know how to put British people in their place. I felt that SA was referring that SM should have better manners next time he's dealing with him. There are, it's all in red.
So, what changes were introduced for the first time in this version 5, Ms. Zalnajar?
Vaselli is now more specific on what he has heard as opposed to being very general, and now he is stating the details that he didn't recall in the first interview with Diana.
So in this version 5, dated the 23rd of September 2019 or thereabouts, can I ask you to go to page 3223? Well, it's only 3 pages of
Yeah,
minutes.
question
Can you
3.
just explain to the court from 322, from the beginning, 3222,
Yes.
wait for the question, from page 3222 to page 3225, what were new additions from Mr. Vaselli, please?
Lefted Smith?
Vaselli
I
shared,
have an objection, Your Honour. This is examination in chief. The
No,
place
you
for-
took the witness to this document.
I did not take the. I took the witness to this document, but you are going through the entire series of them, and it's also based on a false premise because the red text isn't Mr. Vaselli. It's Ms. Tabara. You can see that from the covering email on 3219. Thanks, Alessandro, for taking the call. Please see enclosed the minutes amended.
Yes,
So she's
following a
writing
call with
what he
Mr.
said.
Following a call with Mr. Vaselli, she's.
Let's just deal with the objection on the grounds that it doesn't arise.
Let's do that.
Well, I don't need to hear from you this. A number of times in the course of her evidence, Ms. Al-Najjar justified her position by reference to changes in Mr. Vaselli's statement. So I think it does arise. The question of changes in Mr. Vaselli's statement does arise from
I agree with
answers that were given. And this is just taken through the answers.
Yes.
But I think, again, you've clarified the position, but the substance of it is that Ms. Tabara has produced a version based, it seems, on what she was told by Mr. Vaselli. So that's that, isn't it? That's not in dispute.
Yes, and the witness was taken to 3223 specifically.
I don't have an objection to Mr. Setti going to 3223, I should say that.
Well, thank you. Can we continue, please? With time is pressing.
And this is where Vaselli has given his statement on how Shiraz has behaved during the call on 5th August. On the call, SM has interrupted RS and SA. However, I believe that the use of the language was appropriate, but the way he interrupted others was not appropriate. I understand that he, SM, Shiraz, was getting stuck in the conversation and subsequently he was frustrated, and probably vice versa. They, RS and SA, were also frustrated. I remember that SM said on the call that he was surprised that senior colleagues are still not able to understand the concept around the conflict of interest. The type of interactions is unfortunately quite usual and happened in different forms and shapes. He also makes another change. I felt weird that SA referred to SM as being my friend. The comment was something as, I know how to put British people in their place. I felt that SA was referring that SM should have better manners next time he is dealing with him. So Vasily here is again changed his statement from version 1, 2, 3, 4 to version 5. This was the first time he puts it this way, as opposed to general statements. And this is what I meant by he kept changing his statements. Now it was corroborating with what Shiraz stated in the first instance, and when he reported this, although Shiraz was not present in the office during this conversation between Vasily and Suhail Akbar.
Thank you, Mrs. Al-Najjar. And then, for completeness, there's a version 6 we see at page 3226 to 3233. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, those 6 versions of the minutes all arose out of Mr. Vasely's interview on the 2nd of September. You referenced other witnesses being interviewed. Can I ask you to go to page 3234? And just this part we can go through very quickly. At 3234 to 3239, what do we see there?
Rehan being interviewed. So Rehan's statement is there.
Thank you.
The minutes he confirms.
And that relates to the 3rd of September 2019.
Yes.
And then can I ask you to go to page 3240 through to 3243 and tell the court what we see there?
Suhail Akbar, I think. I'm reading, I'm sorry.
I think that the print is not very clear on that
Yeah.
page. But
It's not very clear,
It
that's why.
says Shiraz Mahmood with Diana
Sorry.
Tabara at the top. Can I ask you now to go to page 3271?
It's Suhail Akbar.
3271 to 3279. What do we see there?
Suhail Akbar being interviewed
And that's on which date?
September.
23rd of September 2019. And then lastly, can I ask you to go to page 3423 through to 3426 and tell the court what you see there?
Fahad Pasha being interviewed 10th October, giving his statement and his minutes.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Al-Najjar. Your Honour, I have no other questions.
So when I met...
Sorry, you're not being asked any questions.
sorry.
So Mr. Pasha's statement starts at 3425, does it?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yes, all right. Mr. Bickford-Smith?
Your Honour, I do seek permission just to cross-examine on the answers just given. Specifically, I want to clear up a point about the minutes because I am concerned about this.
All right.
The document at 3231, the emails at 3229 upwards show the course of events here, don't they? So we have first an email that Ms. Tabara sends on the 2nd of September. Thank you for taking the time to attend our meetings. Our meeting. Please see enclosed the minutes of meeting. Then we have, up the page, apologies for the delay in reviewing the minutes. I've not been feeling very well the last 10 days, going through medical checks, and amended minutes go. So that's version 2.
Well, Mr. Beckford-Smith, if this is a point about the dates, they all speak for themselves, don't
Yes, the point I'm trying to make, though, is that when it said that Mr. Vasselli is changing it, that in my... I put it to the witness, that's not a fair observation, because what we can see is that on the 23rd of September, it's no longer a debate about the same minutes of the same call. What has happened, has it not, Mrs. Al-Najjar, is that Diana Tabara has called Mr. Vasselli and asked him different and supplementary questions, correct? That is not about him changing his minutes of the same meeting. It's about new matters being asked by Ms. Tabara, correct?
The questions remained around the same incident and wanting specific information. It wasn't about another incident or another conversation. It is very much around the same, trying to understand the specifics of what has happened.
And the red text that you were on shortly ago was Ms. Tabara's text after that call. So this is the text Your Honour was looking at 3223. But the minutes are then, with Ms. Tabara's addition, sent back to Mr. Vasselli. And if we look specifically at 3231, can I ask you to go to 3231? I appreciate this is quite detailed, Your Honour, but it is an important point. He has deleted the words that Ms. Tabara had in about Mr. Mahmood having behaved in a manner that was not appropriate. And what he says here is, I believe that the use of the language was appropriate, but the way he interrupted others shows he was trying to make a point and probably irritated the others. And then he goes on to say, the issue of the conflict of interest has been discussed with little progress for over 5 years within the Islamic entity, and during the meeting I expressed my view, siding with SM. So it's not the case that Mr. Vasselli has agreed at any point that Mr. Mahmood has behaved inappropriately, is it? It's simply not the case. That's the question.
The impact of irritating others is very important. He may not have intended, but the impact of his way of talking is very important. He irritated the others, and this was the way described by Vasselli as well. And this was exactly how they felt about it. Irritated versus undermined versus spoken to in a derogatory manner. It is how they felt about it that is also equally important when you are part of a conversation. Some people don't intend for what they're saying to have that impact, but the fact that they made others feel this way is part of respect at work. And this is not being denied by Vasselli. It is now stated as such. Using the word was not appropriate, removed by him. He put in more specifically, irritated the others. Again, the conflict of interest. That's the main issue on Sharia and compliance. Again, at that point in time, Shiraz wasn't privy to the fact that this matter will be closed soon. The restructure is affecting that, acting on that.
Simple question. This is a completely unsatisfactory and extraordinary basis to put someone through a disciplinary management process, the fact that they, quote, probably irritated others in a meeting. Put it to you that as a
It
senior...
wasn't the only statement taken into consideration. Others gave statement.
I have no further questions.
Thank you.
No examination. Thank you.
Ms. Alnajar, thank you. That's been a long day, for which I apologise. Thank you for your assistance during that long day. That completes your evidence, and you're free to leave, and you don't need to come back to court. The only continuing constraint, you can speak to the lawyers now after you've finished. The only thing you can't do is speak to any of the bank's witnesses who remain to give evidence, and they are Ms. Bajwa, Mr. Mahbub, and Mr. Phoebe. So don't speak to them during the rest of this week, because they'll have finished their evidence this week. All right, so we're good to adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow, Mr. Pickford-Smith?
Yes.
Yes, all right, we'll adjourn until 10 a.m.
Thank you.